Welcome back to the Chop It Up show on the 26th and Glencoe Media Network. I am your host, Marcus Flowers, aka Flo, aka Call Me What You Want, just don't call me lazy. And today I am joined by a young woman who I have watched from a distance and I've seen her manifest her destiny. She's always been continually growing, and now it feels like she's finally in her final stage. She's actually in her last semester in law school, and today I am talking with Tiera Brown. Tiera, how are you doing today?
I am doing pretty well. I can't complain.
That's great. Glad to hear. How have you been holding up during the pandemic?
So the pandemic has been that's like it's a weird question for me because it has been hard in most of the aspects that I think everyone can relate to in terms of not having the opportunity to be around other people and have those personal connections and not having the ability to live a normal what we felt was normal before. Um, and then just kind of uncertainty. But then in other aspects, it's kind of forced me to really get on top of my game. And it's been kind of bittersweet. I will say that.
Right. No, you actually you got a new house, right? So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Super dope. So let's talk about your journey real quick. So when exactly, so you started school, you went to Boston College?
I did go to Boston College. I went from 2010 to 2014.
And how was that, especially being a black woman in a place like Boston College?
I wasn't someone who I think I've always been someone that kind of stayed to myself as it and I was always someone that kind of hung around the in group. So what that means is I would always all my friends were black. I didn't really I surrounded myself around people that I felt comfortable around. And I have never really experienced kind of like overt racism like a lot of my peers have, but it exists. And I've heard more than enough stories to know that, the Boston as a city is not, it's diverse, but it still has a long way to go in terms of not being racist and discriminatory. So that definitely exists out there, as it does here too.
No, for sure, for sure. So after college, you didn't go directly into law school. What did you do in the meantime between you said 2014, 2016, and your time before you entered law school?
So I went to work for various tech companies right after I graduated. I went to Oracle, which is probably it's right up there with like Microsoft in terms of
Right.
size, and that was nice, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. So I kind of bounced around from tech firm to tech firm. I went to like this one place that is a budgeting software. Then I went to Verizon, which was formerly MapQuest. So I've kind of been in a few different places in the technology world, and then finally got to the point where I just I wasn't happy. I wasn't satisfied going to my job every day. And so I decided, along with other things that happened in my life, it was time to go to law school.
Nice. And when you said you were tired of the technology world and it was weighing you down, what exactly was tiring for you? Just because for like somebody like myself who's just in media, I love just like technology and knowing the inner workings of it. So what was the time when you were just like tech isn't for me anymore?
I was in sales at Oracle, so it was like I was, selling software to these huge, Fortune 500 companies, and it just was like I would call and I'd get assigned territories, and it's like I'm asking these companies if they want to buy $1 million worth of software. So I think that was like my sales goal when I first started. It was like $2 million, and it was just like this is for me. It wasn't fulfilling. Like I really didn't care to provide. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
wasn't something that I felt like it wasn't what I was doing wasn't changing the world. It was I don't know, there was no purpose to it, and it just got boring after a while.
Yeah, no, I completely feel you there. So I mentioned it in the intro, but you're in your last semester of law school at the University of Denver. So congratulations for that. What are you going to do after you walk across that stage or the virtual stage?
So I actually don't get to walk across the stage until next May, and that's
Oh,
standard for December grads. We have to always wait till May anyway, so
okay.
I'm not too sad about that. But I'll actually be done in December, and what I'm doing now is I'm just doing applications for post-graduation placements. And mostly what I'm looking for is work with indigent clients, so public defender's office or juvenile defense or civil rights, like movement lawyering, something like that. That's what I'm looking for right now.
Okay, dope. So what is your eventual goal when it comes to having your law degree?
I honestly want to work myself out of a job when it comes to my law degree, like, and what that means. I want to be able, I want there to eventually be a time when we don't need public defenders, because the way that, we look at people who have committed crimes, we've changed that world. It's not, the prisons aren't full of people. Like, I want there to be a time where my job's not necessary, and then I can go do, something else. That's like a dream goal for me. And I know it's probably a long way out, but
Nice. No, that's super dope. So one of the things that I really wanted to get you on to talk about is I've been following you on Twitter for many years, and you are a sex worker advocate. And I forgot you had a thread on Twitter one time, and you were talking about why it's important to protect sex workers and have like basically them having like fair treatment as employees. Can you tell me why that's important?
so it it kind of intersects with the labor movement in a lot of ways, because if you think of like some of the least protected workers. So I would use undocumented farm laborers, for example. They are some of the least protected people when it comes to the job that they do. They don't, they don't have any kind of benefits. There's really no way, like if something happens to them on the job, for them to come and, you know, come to a boss and say, "This is what's going on. Can you help me?" And that's like any kind of like injuries. That's any kind of like discrimination. If someone racially attacks them on a job, like they don't have any way to have a grievance and get that taken care of. And that's kind of how it is in the sex worker world as well. They are not protected in the jobs that they do. So like I can tell you almost most of the, if you ask like sex workers, if they've been sexually assaulted, a lot of them will tell you that they have. And that'll be on the job, like stuff like that. And it's not, and it, like there's one part of people that will say, well, that's what you signed up for. But then there's another part of people, it's like when you get a job at a hotel, you don't expect to be, berated or sexually harassed, and you have protections if something like that happens. The same thing doesn't exist for sex workers. So not only are they like the least protected in that sense, but they also are taken advantage of for the most part in the way that, we have to pay to work. So people don't know that we have to pay $100, somewhere around there, depending on what time you go to work, at least at the last club that I was at, to even work. But as an independent contractor, you know what I mean? Like, so it's kind of, it muddies the water, and it also mirrors kind of like the argument that college athletes are making for, compensation for the labor that they do. It's the same thing for sex workers. Like we are bringing in a lot of money for these clubs, and we should be able to be paid for it without having to break the bank and pay back the club and stuff like that. And there's also a lot of discrimination. People complain about the lack of diversity in Denver strip clubs, but what they don't realize is that it's a systemic problem. Like the strip club industry is inherently racist. They don't want to hire Black girls. They don't want to hire girls with big asses. Like that's just not, and it's discrimination because we already know, that there's a certain demographic of women that are more shapely, that have those features, and they're not getting hired because of racist policies. So that's why I kind of bothers me when people get mad at that, because they're not getting mad at the real root of the issue.
Right. So moving past your professional career real quick, Another reason why I wanted you on is you've been very vocal with your sex workers and including them in the labor movement and with time like Black Lives Matter and everything like that. So I wanted to ask you, because you're the first person who I've talked to who's been out. How has it been to be a part of the protest during these past couple of months? In the midst of a pandemic?
I would say that the protesting part, like with the pandemic in mind, isn't the most difficult thing about it. After the first couple protests that I went to, I did go get a free COVID screening just to make sure. But when you're out there protesting, I think getting COVID's the last thing you're really thinking about, at least for many of us. It's, are we going to get arrested today? And that's something that you have to keep in mind, especially now. And I don't know how much you've been watching it, but there's been a lot of protesters that have been getting kidnapped and getting charged months later because the police are looking at media footage and they catch your face in the crowd. So that's kind of like the big concern. I don't think anyone's really out there like, oh my God, I don't want to. I'm afraid I'm going to catch, COVID-19, because otherwise we probably wouldn't have came out there in the first place. It's really, people worried that they're at the end of their rope, like they're tired, and the thing that they're probably most worried about is confrontation with the police and or getting arrested.
Right. No, for sure. And you talked about that fear of the police, and since you've been to multiple marches, do the police act different towards certain crowds more than others?
Yeah, I will say that police, excuse me, police Black bodies more than any other group of people. You're definitely a target if you are a minority out there protesting. What I will say is the majority of people that are protesting, like the mass, it's just, it's mostly white people. Like that's one thing I notice at a lot of the protests, but I do think it has to do with the population as well. Denver has a very small proportion of Black people, and a lot of Black people can't either afford to be out protesting, or we don't have the luxury of just saying, hey, I don't have nothing to do today, so I'm going to go protest in a lot of cases. So I will say that the police do police Black people a little bit more harshly when it comes to protest actions. They also target people that are in organizations like DSA, PSL, like people that have a voice and have been using their voice this summer. Those people are being targeted right now.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it was a few weeks ago when you did the Slut Walk. Were you an organizer of that, or were you just a participant?
So I kind of joined in last minute to I was asked to kind of speak at the event, which I did, and I joined too late to really help organize any one part of it. But I do think moving forward that I will be helping out with the organizational part. It went really well. This is the second year. I do think that the turnout was pretty low compared to last year, but that could have been a lot of things. And I do think one of the things is just because there was a lot going on that day in particular. There was 2 other protests happening at the same time. So.
Right. No, for sure. Do you think we're going to get to the point where there's protest fatigue, when people are just tired of protesting?
Sorry.
Oh no, you're fine.
I gotta call you back. I gotta call you back. We are at that point where there's protest fatigue. I think, and I don't think that a lot of people realize that this is like, we're in for the long haul. Like, we were protesting and they're expecting change to happen, overnight, and it just doesn't work like that. Like, this is something that is years in the making. It's going to go on for like years in terms of direct action and stuff like that. And so we do have some momentum, which is good, but I do think going into the winter months, people don't want to be outside in the cold. And I think with things kind of with jobs opening back up and people joining the workforce again, it's going to be hard to have a big showing like we did this past summer at a lot of the protests.
Right. No, for sure, for sure. Do you think there will be since it is since we are heading into the winter months, there will be more virtual protests with like town halls with like city council people or government officials?
Yeah, they actually I've seen quite a few city officials at protests, most of them being city officials of color. But they've been out there this summer, and that's very pleasing to see, because we always say that they work for the people, and I think that that's really evident when you see them out there protesting alongside us.
Right. No, for sure, for sure. And just lastly, when we're talking about like the protests and then demonstrations, how do you feel like people who necessarily don't want to be at the protests, how can they still feel like they are included in the movement and still support those who are out there on the streets?
So I would say there's a lot of different ways to do that, and I especially am vocal about local elections. So I'm not necessarily talking about, deciding between Trump and Biden, but I'm talking about getting informed about who's running for city commissioner in your jurisdiction, or who's running for DA, because we get so angry at these charging decisions when it comes to police shooting Black people. And it really boils down to the prosecutor choosing whether or not to bring charges. And in most cases, like out here in Denver, all of the prosecutors that, the DAs, Dave Young, George Walker, like all those guys, they're very conservative leaning when it comes to criminal justice and stuff. So they are protecting their own, like the police, right. They work together. And so that's why it's important to get involved in those kind of elections. And even something as small as, and I say it's not a small role at all, but like Tay Anderson on the school board, like those are important positions, and he's using his platform. So we need to, be voting people in that are not afraid to do that kind of work. Aside from voting, though, I would also say that there's a lot of like educational things going on in terms of like groups that are like Freedom School. I don't know if you heard of them, but they are doing like free organizer trainings and stuff like that. So just learning more about history and social movements and, what we can do to turn the tide. You can get involved in like phone banking, and that's just calling people and, talking to them about why they should vote for a certain candidate, like stuff like that. Definitely donating. If you can't be out there in person, like donate your money or donate, like a lot of the movement centers around the homeless population as well, because we need to get them housed. And so donating what you can to those different efforts. I think there's a lot of different things that you can be doing. And then even just generating dialogue. And I'm not talking about the dialogue on Facebook where you say, do you think trans women are women, or, right. Stuff like that, like not having divisive reasonings behind why you start certain dialogue. I'm actually talking about having, getting people together and really having a discussion about certain topics.
Right. No, for sure. So lastly, let's go back to your professional career real quick. How has law school been in the midst of COVID?
So back in February, we went virtual, and it was, I think it's hard for a lot of, law school's already hard. It's the hardest thing that I've ever done. But I think it's especially hard. And the thing is, law school draws type A personality. So it's people that are very perfectionist. And, those kind of people are hurting right now because they're having to learn in a different kind of environment. We don't have any, like we have to pay the same amount of tuition. Actually, our tuition went up a little bit.
Wow.
But we're not even there in person, and we don't get the same. It's just, it's been hard, and a lot of us don't have, like, we're having to, choose between work and go to school. But like for me, I can't choose between that, so I have to do both. But a lot of people are feeling the financial strain, and then even to a couple of like my Black classmates, there's been a lot of stuff going on at DU specifically around racism, and they just don't feel comfortable being there, and with a lot of the stuff going on. So it's been especially hard, and we have, people that don't really like the social movements aren't bothering a lot of people because they're not affected by it because their skin's not black. But
Right.
when you have like black peers, I would go protest and then have class that same day. Like it's just we're living in two different worlds, and so I think it's really hard to reconcile that.
Right. No, for sure, for sure. So lastly, you talked about working yourself out of a job. Well, no, before that, you have established quite a brand just on just like social media. Like you are a very free spirited person. So can you tell me the important free spirited person who also has knowledge of the system that you are in? Can you tell me the importance of building your own brand?
I actually didn't really come into it thinking that I was cultivating my brand. I had just the way that I have always been. I've been more like an open book. There has been so many the stories that I have and that I can tell people. It's something that people benefit from hearing. So my brand just kind of came together incidentally. I really didn't have like a strategy. I do think it is important though, because having a good brand can put you in places. It can get you in front of people. And I think for my purposes, it can help. It helps people when they can, look at you and say, I know this about this person and about their journey, and this is how it influences me or inspires me. So I don't know. It just kind of incidentally came together.
Right. No, it's just been super dope to watch just because because I think before you were in law school, you had your own you had your own private bartending business.
Mm-hmm.
And that was super dope. I never heard of that. And you seem very to the point, and you always have a go get it personality while also bringing those around you up with you.
Right. That's something that's been I think it goes beyond the motherly instinct in me, but that's definitely the mom in me is wanting to help others and, see people win as well.
Right. No, for sure, for sure. So you talked about you talked about working yourself out of a job where we wouldn't need your profession. Where do you exactly see yourself 5 years from now?
I see myself doing a lot of what I don't have any big plans for the next 5 years. I think what I've been doing now is probably what I'll be doing in 5 years. I toy a lot with the idea of like running for political office one day.
Nice.
And I might be more set on that in 5 years. But I think I'll definitely be doing what I do now, and that's more like public defense and stuff like that. So.
Nah, that's dope. That's dope. Well, I just want to appreciate you for taking time out of your busy schedule to chop it up with me. Do you want to tell people where they can follow you at on social media?
Yeah, so on Twitter, I am going to be Lawless Love JD. That's LAWLESS Love JD. And then on Instagram, it's my first and last name, Tiera Brown _XO. And yeah, Facebook, I'm just Tiera Brown amongst many.
Okay, dope. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you're following me on all social media platforms at Flow My Hero. Follow the brand at 26 and Glencoe Media Network on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. And until next time, peace.
See ya.
All right, everybody. Y'all know who it is, Metro Meta and
At One Marcus Flowers.
And we'd like to thank you for watching and listening to our content. We'd like to thank you even more if you leave a like, a comment,
Subscribe. Definitely subscribe. We need that. Subscribe, subscription.
Hey, don't forget to share with all your friends. and tell us how you feel.
And tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend that you got it from 26 and Glencoe Media Network.
Keep it real.